Okay, class, this is Mr. McKee, and we are going to take our virtual field trip around parts of the watershed that is in the Chesapeake Bay area. As you can see out here, we've got a few different things on the water. Some of these things are words you need to understand. The water itself, that is an abiotic feature of the watershed. It is not living. It never has been. All of the trees and things and the birds, I'm not sure if you can see them or not, are part of the biotic features of the watershed. Now, biotic features are things that either are alive or once were. So if you see a dead tree stump, that's a biotic feature because at one point it was alive. Water, rocks, the air around you, all of those are abiotic because they never ever were alive. Over here on this log, well, there were a few turtles there. They have since dove off into the water. There's a small one right there. He's still there. They would be biotic features of the watershed because they are where they are. They live here in the water. Now, a watershed is basically a large area of land where water drains down into another larger body of water, either a main river or in our case, the Chesapeake Bay. We live in a wetlands. If you look back over here, you can see some marshy areas. These are areas that are covered in water either all or most of the year. Those are called wetlands. And these are marshes. These are very important to our ecology around here and to the ecosystem where we all live. All right, guys, let's talk a little bit about water quality. The beaker, the Erlenmeyer flask on the left is right out of the river where I'm fishing here in Northwest River Park. And the water here obviously has some sediments in it. It is not filtered at all. The one on the right, I just poured out of a water bottle. That's the kind that you're used to drinking. And this is what is in our water. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad for the fish or bad for you to swim in. It just means that there are little bits of dead material, plants, animals, all of those sediments, broken down bits of rock that get suspended in the water in what we call silt. And the measure of that, how much silt is in the water, is what we call turbidity. Turbidity just tells you how cloudy that the water is. This would have a higher turbidity level than this one, obviously. All right, class, there are a couple of things that I can't really show you from here because, well, I'm not going to take this boat all the way up to the source of these rivers that lead into the Chesapeake Bay because they take us way up into the mountains and it won't go that far. It'll have to stop at the fall line right around Richmond, even though it's a small craft. But the river source is where the river begins. Around here, that's usually in the mountains. It flows downstream through streams and through creeks and smaller rivers. These are all referred to as tributaries. Each one is a tributary until it flows into the main river. Let's say the James River. The James River is obviously one of the main rivers in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. It empties into the river at what we call the river's mouth. That is the end of the river where it dumps into a larger body of water. Generally for us, it would be the Chesapeake Bay. Some places you would have the Gulf of Mexico, things like that, or any ocean or any large lake or large body of water. Now, as it comes down through there are times during the year when the river gets over their banks and it floods the flat area on both sides of the river. These are referred to as floodplains. Makes sense? Floods go there, floodplains. They also happen to be very good for farming. So when you think about floodplains, don't think it's a bad thing. because it can be very good. That's where farmers can grow their crops, because it drops all kinds of good sediments and good soil from further upstream. Now, as the river starts to slow down when it gets to a flatter area, they no longer try to make a track through rocks, through land. They tend to slow down and move around things, what we refer to as a meander. Now, these meanders, think about it like when you go to the bathroom. You leave my classroom, you walk across the hall, you look in Ms. Darden's room, you come back, you look in Ms. Pierce's room, you walk over, see what's going on in the cafeteria, you finally go to the bathroom, then on the way back, you do the same, you check a couple of other doors, see if there are any friends there, stop at the water fountain. You're not making a straight line, you're meandering, you're wandering around over and over, trying to find a place to avoid getting back to class. So rivers do the same thing. They slow down, they meander as they move along down through their course. As they get closer to the river mouth, they slow down, where you find your wetlands, marshes, swamps, things like that we have around here. And these are all very good for our environment too. These things have a function, and their function is to make sure that trash and other things from further upstream have some place to get filtered out before they go into large bodies of water. So that's just a brief talk about the different parts of a river system. We still have a lot of things to cover. We'll get to that in our next little segment. Okay, we are a little bit after low tide, and we're looking at the marshland that's right here in our backyard in Chesapeake. There's an egret over there. That little teeny tiny spot is a biotic factor of the watershed. All of these marsh grasses are biotic factors. The water, obviously, abiotic. And you can tell that it's low tide because you can see all of the exposed land, all of those sediments that have been dropped by the riverways as they slow down. You can see that the water is meandering around things. There's a small island there. And this is just a small part of our watershed here in the Chesapeake area of Virginia. We're in the Albemarle watershed part headed into the Chesapeake Bay. We all need to do our part. I see some trash over here. More trash down there. Over here, there's some more wrappers of things. Now, the marsh grass helps to filter that out so it doesn't make it further out, but that doesn't mean we need to do nothing. We need to make sure that we put our trash in the places where it's supposed to go, trash cans and the like, so that we don't have to have somebody out here picking this stuff up or it getting ingested by animals. It's just not a good thing. So conservation means making sure that the environment that you leave is just as good, if not better, than when you got there. So here's some more marshland, swampland that's right along the Elizabeth River Southern Branch, which is part of our watershed. You can see all of the dead trees and things that are knocked down, some different types of vegetation that's here, all of those things being biotic factors. I can see a bunch of little water skippers that we talked about in our unit on water tension and surface tension. Those are all right around in here as well. And the good news is I'm not seeing any trash. Nobody has left anything behind that they shouldn't have. That's awesome. All right, class, now we're going to talk about estuaries. An estuary is where freshwater and saltwater mix. In the distance there, I hope you can see the bridge. That's the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. On the other side of that is the Chesapeake Bay. That's the estuary. The salt water from the Atlantic Ocean, which is on my side of the bridge, is going toward the bay, mixing with the fresh water from all the rivers that empty into it, and that creates an estuary. And the Chesapeake Bay is the largest estuary in the United States.